Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into the brand new 2025 organizational profile for ECYO. That's the Eshet Children and Youth Development Organization. If you've ever wondered how grassroots movements actually scale up to create massive, continent-wide impact, well, you are in the right place. We're going to look at their exact strategies, the raw numbers, and the incredible people driving this whole thing forward. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Transforming lives, empowering futures. Now, that's not just a catchy motto, it's literally the backbone of a 25-year legacy. ECYDO has been doing relentless, grassroots community service in Ethiopia since way back in 2001. They didn't start as some massive international NGO. They started right from the ground up. And today, we're going to explore exactly how they grew and the specific blueprint they used to get there.
So here is our roadmap for today. First, introducing ECYDO. Second, their core mission and goals. Third, a decade of impact. Fourth, ongoing projects. And finally, the people behind ECYDO.
All right, Section 1. Introducing ECYDO, a grassroots force for change.
So, picture this. It's 2001, and ECYDO emerges directly from a grassroots initiative in Addis Ababa. And the coolest part? It was driven entirely by young volunteers. These were kids who looked around their community and saw some absolutely urgent, unaddressed social, economic, and health challenges facing their own peers. And instead of waiting around for outside help to swoop in, they just mobilized themselves to create a local civil society organization. It's honestly a classic, inspiring story of local problems being solved by local leadership.
Moving on to Section 2. Core mission and goals. Fostering safe environments.
If we look directly at their vision statement, the goal is crystal clear. A safe, clean, and happy environment for every child and youth in Ethiopia to grow in. That means an Ethiopia completely free from HIV/AIDS and gender-based violence. They picture a country where every single child has access to education, health services, and equal opportunities, basically making absolutely sure nobody is left behind. It's a bold vision for sure.
So the crucial point is how they actually translate that massive vision into real action. They prioritize 4 foundational objectives to get this done. First, they're aggressively working to decrease new HIV infections. Second, they focus heavily on maternal and child health, right alongside family planning. Third, and I think this one is absolutely vital, they actively engage men and boys to promote gender equality. And fourth, they're tackling youth unemployment head-on by partnering up with stakeholders to give young people real, tangible job skills.
But they don't stop there. They pair those foundational goals with a really holistic support system. We're talking providing comprehensive sexual and reproductive health services. They fight fiercely against gender-based violence, female genital mutilation, and child marriage. They also tackle youth drug addiction, stepping in with both prevention and psychological support. And finally, they educate children and women on democracy, the rule of law, and active citizenship. They aren't just putting a Band-Aid on symptoms, they're actually building the foundation for a healthy, democratic society.
Which brings us to Section 3, a decade of impact, 2015 to 2025.
243,800. Just let that number sink in for a second. That is the sheer number of individual beneficiaries directly reached across Ethiopia by ECYDO in just a 10-year span. And listen, these aren't just passive impressions or clicks on a website. These are real human lives transformed through their programs, whether that's a young person landing a job or an adolescent girl receiving life-saving health services.
To fuel that kind of massive impact, they've mobilized $1.4 million. Now that represents an immense level of trust. You literally don't mobilize that kind of funding as a local organization without proving over and over that you are reliable and you get results. In fact, they currently work with over 20 global and local partners who trust them implicitly to execute these vital community projects.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the math. When you divide those mobilized funds by the number of beneficiaries, you get a cost of just $5.74 per person. I mean, wow, talk about extreme operational efficiency. For less than the cost of a fancy cup of coffee, they are fundamentally altering the trajectory of a young person's life in Ethiopia. It's a total masterclass in stretching grassroots resources to the absolute limit.
And when you trace this whole journey from that tiny group of youth volunteers back in 2001 to a decade of massive outreach, it all culminates here in 2025, with highly prestigious recognition from the African Union for their contribution to the youth, peace, and security agenda. To put that into perspective for you, they were one of only 3 youth organizations honored across the entire African continent. No small feat.
Moving right along to Section 4. Current and ongoing projects.
grounding the strategy.
So to maintain that incredible level of impact today, ECYDO is currently operating across 15 different thematic areas. They've already successfully completed 31 major projects, and their current scope is just massive. It ranges from maternal health and substance abuse prevention all the way to peacebuilding and active citizenship. And they're doing all this across 3 distinct regions in Ethiopia: Addis Ababa, Oromia, and Afar.
Let's look at a quick snapshot of their active projects, because this is where you really see those broad themes connect to real human elements. Take the Smart Mama initiative, focused on safer reproductive health, or the Message 2 project, which is actively building fully equipped safe spaces for adolescent girls to learn and find peer support. Then there's SHRR for All, which is just incredible. They are literally creating Braille dictionaries to make sure youth with disabilities have equal access to reproductive health info. Plus, the Africa Youth Panel is out there actively fighting for dignified employment. It's just a fantastic lineup.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 5, the people behind ECYDO, the engine of impact.
You know, when an organization preaches women's empowerment, you really have to look at their internal structure to see if they actually walk the talk. Well, check this out. Out of their entire staff operating across those 3 regions, an overwhelming 69% are female. They aren't just talking about gender equality, they're actively building a workforce that perfectly reflects that mission.
And that strategic vision, it's guided by a highly diverse, expert-led board of directors, which, by the way, is also dominated by female leaders. You've got Salam Damesi, the board chairperson, who specializes in youth empowerment and holds a master's in counseling psychology. Then there's Tadesse Alabikin, a senior media strategist making sure their impact is actually seen and heard. And Yatai Tase, a judicial leader and legal advocate fighting for vulnerable communities. It is an absolute powerhouse team, combining developmental, legal, and communication expertise.
And all of that brings us straight to their central organizational ethos, which they've elegantly summarized in their tagline, Building Sustainable Futures from Within. After 25 years of service, over 240,000 lives touched, and a relentless commitment to extreme operational efficiency and female empowerment, ECYDO absolutely proves that the most sustainable change doesn't just happen to a community. It's built by the community from the inside out.
So, I'm going to leave you with the question to chew on. How can we, in our own capacities, support these kinds of grassroots movements that are actively transforming local communities from the inside out? Organizations like ECYDO are out there doing the hard, efficient, literally life-saving work every single day. If you want to learn more about their incredible 25-year journey, or if you want to get involved and support their ongoing projects, head over to ECYDO.org. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.